hearing the word, even to this day, even having gone through it, just hearing it makes me cringe.
Mm.
I don't like hearing the word. I don't like the word. I don't like what it represents.
Yes.
I didn't want this. Nobody wants it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it wasn't a death sentence,
Yeah.
and that was important to know.
Hey, Paul.
Hi.
Welcome to Navigating Life podcast.
Thank you very much. Good to
Yes.
be here.
Yes. Well, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Yes, I was born in Southern California, in Pasadena, California, not Texas. I grew up in Orange County. I have six sisters and no brothers. Not all of them are with us anymore, but I uh, lived and bounced around a bunch in different cities in Orange County. But at some point, I discovered I was mostly into technology and making new things, and I had already been, making games and such for myself. This is back in a time when people didn't do that, and nobody taught this in school. And I had a friend encourage me to join him in Northern California making games at Electronic Arts, and went up there, and eventually that took me. That same experience brought me out to Texas, and so once I moved to Texas the first time, I had to leave it a couple of times, but I've always wanted to be back. Like, this is my home, and I've renounced all my California citizenship. So I got my complimentary horse and hat.
Yeah, so welcome to
Yeah.
Texas. Paul, would you tell us a little bit about your challenging phase and take us on your journey, please?
Sure, I'll try to keep it brief, but the it started in 2017, the early part of 2017, and my mother had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, metastatic pancreatic cancer. In fact, we just passed her anniversary of her passing
Sorry.
just recently, and 6 years ago, she she went through this experience in probably about a week from starting to feel bloating and gas and just real uncomfortable to being gone. It was a very, very fast experience, and so um, I came home, and I'd been experiencing something that I didn't know what to do about, but I was starting to see blood in the toilet. It wasn't a good thing to see, and I realized that having just watched my mom go through something, I didn't want to ignore it. And I called my doctor the next day, and we went in and had some conversations, did some tests. Nothing really came out of the test, but he said, I just want to be sure. Let's get you a colonoscopy because you've never had one before. And, it's a little early, but, we'll start now
Okay.
because they were recommending people start,
Yeah.
age 50.
How old were you, if you don't mind me?
I was 48.
Okay.
Yeah. So the the I had a great doctor. He said, "Let's go, set it up." It's about a month or so later because I couldn't get into the appointment right away. But did the whole process. The fasting and the other part, drinking all the fluids and stuff. Went to the appointment, and when I was done, it was like time travel. Honestly, if you're ever putting off getting a colonoscopy and it's something you think you need, or you're past a certain age, don't hesitate. Like, go and get it. It's not hard. It's not anybody can do it, and it's nothing weird.
Yeah.
They knock you out. So they put me on propofol, knocked me out, and I time traveled for a brief moment. I said, "Hey, doc, are we going to get started here?" And he says, "I'm all done," just like that. But he came back and said, "You've got 6 polyps and rectal cancer." And so he took care of the polyps, but the tumor was still there, and it was reasonably large size, and so that started the process.
Yeah.
The very first thing he did was come out and say, here's an oncologist for radiation, here's an oncologist for chemotherapy, and here's a name of a surgeon. I highly recommend him. He's the best, right? So he gave me these names, and I started making phone calls. He says, "You want to make these phone calls right away, and this will be your team." moving forward. This is my medical team. And so that's exactly what happened. They all coordinated with each other,
Mhm.
and I felt like they were working together
Yeah.
as a
Okay.
laparoscopic procedure. And so very quick healing time and all that. So they went in and removed it, and then they sent it off for pathology. Came back and said, yeah, we have some microscopic evidence of cancer cells on the periphery after
Mhm.
what they removed was sampled. So they said, um, you know, good news, bad news. Good news is you're still with us. Bad news is, we're going to have to take the whole thing out. We're going to have to go and get basically remove my rectum, which is
Mhm.
sounds terrible. I guess you could say it kind of is, but um, it wasn't the end of the story.
Yeah.
So uh, they did their process. I had the second surgery, had chemo and radiation. I had that a couple different times,
Mhm.
and then they did the second procedure. And I had an ostomy bag for like 6, 7, 8 months, something like
Mhm.
that. That was really uncomfortable. I didn't like that at all. I don't recommend it, but
Yeah.
you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then the next thing that was that I said, is there a way that I can have this removed, right? Reverse this process and kind of
Mhm.
hook things up again. And he says, well, we won't know until we're doing it,
Mhm.
but let's give it a shot. So I had a third surgery to do that, and I have never been happier.
You heard cancer. How did you, initially, how did you react to that?
I got to tell you, hearing the word, even to this day, even having gone through it, just hearing it makes me cringe.
Mm.
I don't like hearing the word. I don't like the word. I don't like what it represents.
Yes.
I didn't want this. Nobody wants it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it wasn't a death sentence,
Yeah.
and that was important to know.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, it's like I don't even want to hear jokes about cancer, like because it's like, hey,
Yeah.
ooh, that's not good.
Yeah.
But it was. You go through a lot of emotional swings. I had to take a little bit of time to sort of for me kind of get into that a little bit, like just take a little bit of time. But then I
Mhm.
realized that this isn't about me. It's not. I this doesn't necessarily define me,
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean that my life is over in any way.
Yeah.
And honestly, I trusted in the Lord, so I go, He's my. If this is something that I have to do, or something that He will allow, then
Yeah.
I'm going to just be grateful, and I'm going
Yes.
to live in that space, and just well, it's just a process. So I'm going to take this step at a time, having a really good support system through friends and our church, and through my family. Just and you find out who your friends are.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just want somebody to sit next to
Yeah.
you and be there with you, and not
Absolutely.
try to make you feel better, not try to make you, try to solve your problem. Like there's just someone there is way better than silence. These
That's
things.
a great, actually, tip, I would say is because when, we're going through a hard time, we want to know there's someone next to us, that is there. Maybe they'll just pray or they'll say, "Hey, I'm here for you."
Yeah,
You know, we don't need anything else. This, I'm here for you. What can I do for you?
yeah,
Do you want me to just hang out with you? You know what I mean? So those that I feel like it fills you up. You know.
it does. And I think the other thing is especially I'm going to speak just as a male. Um, but I think this probably applies to everyone, but
Hmm.
just particularly, I I'm not I'm not used to receiving. I'm not used to being, loved on or given, care, or, provided with, help, and
Yes.
I'm certainly not used to asking for it.
Yes.
And because there's some, like, I gotta say, there's a little bit of pride, but a little bit of something. There's a little bit of, we just weren't brought up that way. It's not
Yes.
natural for us to ask and, reach out and say, please, hey, can you help me with this or help me with that? And I'm glad that I didn't have to do any asking. My wife did all that for me. She was there every step, and she's contacting everybody. Please pray, please help, please, anything you can do. And our church members also would showing up with meals and stuff, and that was phenomenal. It's so helpful because we didn't have to stress out about like, oh, I have to go grocery shopping or whatever. I can just be here.
Yeah, one less thing.
One less thing to
Yes.
worry about and think about.
And I exactly know what you mean because I feel like it's hard, right? Like, and I think these challenging places, phases, take us to this place of acceptance, right? And
Yes.
it teaches us it's okay. It's okay to ask, and it's okay to receive. And I could totally relate when you said that it's harder. I'm like, I can give, but it's harder to receive. I know you had mentioned something about your arm with the. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. So when I started the infusions, I opted to not get the port, which apparently is like a more permanent thing where they can just kind of hook up real easy. If I, in retrospect, if I had the choice, if I am, pray I don't have to, but if I ever have the choice to do it again, I would do the port because it'd be so much easier.
Okay.
But they would give me infusions through IV, and so they would put it on my arm, whichever one, and they would try to find like my veins, and they'd start up here towards the top, because if I did it the further down my arm it would go, the more of my arm would be useless and dead during that time when the chemo was happening. So like if for days afterwards I wouldn't feel things. Like I had peripheral neuropathy, so I couldn't feel my baby toes. I couldn't feel my fingers quite well. To this day, I still can't feel my baby toes. Like I can feel them, but they don't. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's not normal. Like it's just different. I don't have the same balance from after that. It's little things like that. But as they were trying to go further and further, they would, if they couldn't find the vein here, they come here. They couldn't find it there, they come down, 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 and then eventually, I'm like, this is the worst. And they get to the bottom, because what happens is like they start to go in, and then they're like, well, your veins are hiding now, because I didn't know that was a thing. There were things like just making breakfast, picking up an egg, and an egg was cold, and so the cold didn't feel cold to me. It felt like fire. So I couldn't pick up an egg, like trying to crack an egg or something, make my daughter breakfast, before she goes to school. And I'm like, and I've dropped, I can't tell you how many eggs I've dropped. Just,
So that's the neuropathy?
yeah, it's all part of that. But,
I'm sorry you had to go through that, but we're happy you're here on the other end,
yeah,
right? You've had the surgery, you're in remission, correct?
yeah, they never used that word with me.
Mhm.
There's two things that they never said with me. Um, They never said remission. That word never came out of my doctor's mouth. They just said, "Hey, in 5 years we're going to check you again." And I should be actually coming up 5 years after the last surgery. It should be coming up real soon for them to check. But at 5 years with no recurrence, um, they say you're cured. That's essentially it. You're good. We don't have to do anything else. No more just regular colonoscopies and things like that. But they the other word they didn't use with me was. Uh, Stage this or stage that. Like they just didn't use that language and stuff you hear
In the movies
in
and
movies and stuff.
TV.
Yeah. So they're like, no, it's a,
What gives you motivation in life?
oh boy. Um, I gotta have to say my family, but especially my daughter. Um, she's my heart,
Mm.
and I want, there's something about being a parent that just drives you no matter what. Like I don't know where that comes from.
What would you say is a trait that you like about yourself?
About myself.
Yeah.
Um, I'm intensely curious.
Mm.
I am. I can't stop learning and analyzing, and I'm always thinking about things. But I actually um, came across this book that was very interesting to me, and had to do with it was called Powerful by Patty McCord, she wrote this co-authored this book, I think, with she did was one of the authors of the Netflix Culture Deck. And I'm not a big Netflix person, but the story was interesting, and it inspired me to cultivate a culture of curiosity wherever I am.
What is a trait that you respect or you love in other people?
I think the number one trait for me in other people is authenticity. And I think that comes like I think that may be a word that's easily misunderstood. But when I think of someone that's authentic, I think of someone that is genuine and has humility and is introspective,
Mm.
and aware of things around them, and willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
That there's
I love all of those,
yeah.
I love those words.
It's a huge thing, and I'm attracted towards people that are willing to do that and be aware that maybe their vulnerability may also be quite heavy. You
Yeah.
know,
I truly feel like, being vulnerable is a gift, actually, not just to ourselves, but to others, because it definitely, um, I feel like it inspires people, to come out of their shell
and
and
share.
share, right? Like how we're doing. This is the passion, right? Hey, why are we sharing? Why are we doing this? Absolutely is to, give hope, right? And to show you that, hey, you're not alone, you
That's
know,
right.
we've done it, and you can do it too because everybody's fighting a battle, right? And how can we help each other, right? And have that community surrounding ourselves with authentic people, right? And it's contagious. It
Yeah, yeah,
definitely is contagious, right? When I'm authentic, when I'm vulnerable and I'm honest, you can see that, you can sense that, right? And we want to model that. And when we're saying parenting, right? Like I definitely want to model that to my kids, right?
yes.
And hopefully create this whole generation, the next generation of authentic people, right? But like we need to model that first, right?
It starts somewhere, right?
Start somewhere. Um, so would you tell us what is next for you? I know you've been through this journey and you're here 5-year mark. And what is next for you?
Well, um, I think I'm going to take a moment to celebrate. I think just to be aware of what happens. My mom's passing
Mm.
from this thing was just a couple of days ago,
I'm
and
sorry.
but the timing is interesting because that it's about that same time that I think all of this is
Yeah.
concluding. But I'm I've been working on a whole bunch of new things. I've got my job since I make games.
Hmm.
I work in Houston, and things are progressing on that front, and we're doing interesting things. We're also making movies, which is
Hmm.
nice. But on my own personal front, I think I mentioned to you before that many years ago, I started working on music just because I've always been sort of a musician. I played drums, and I won't say I'm very good at any of the instruments that I play, but it brings me a sense of I don't know, an element of joy. It's a creative outlet
Yes.
that I feel like I need to have something. And I forgot it. Recently started rebuilding my music studio because I'd done all this stuff, and I recovered some of my old work and kind of remastered it and finally got it published. And so that was a quite an experience. So I guess technically, as I was doing this process, like I guess I formed myself a record label because I
Mhm.
had to name it, and I got published on all the streaming sites, and now. I'm continuing to do more work in that, so
Yeah.
I'm getting to play a little bit.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That is, huge,
I never expected that. I'm
Yeah.
a technology guy. What am I doing making music?
Yeah. But it's one of your passions,
Yeah.
right? You've had it for a long time and you were able to achieve it. And would you say that this journey with cancer kind of made you come to that point of, hey, I need to take this step in accomplishing this goal or this dream I've had for so long?
I don't know if that was the one that got me. I think my daughter encouraging me to do it
Mm.
because I let her hear some of it once upon a time. She's like, "How can I get this on my phone?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, about that." But uh, there's definitely an element to, what am I leaving? What's my legacy going to be?
Yeah.
And I don't want to live with regret.
What lessons have you learned from this journey?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The first one I'd say is um, find it. Bring yourself into a place of gratitude. Like you have to move into a place of gratitude because otherwise you will find yourself uh, feeling sad and sorry or depressed or
Mm.
whatever. But as soon as you start focusing on what's great and how much you're loved and how much people are in your life and the great things that are happening for you, you have to shift that focus away from the darkness into the light,
Yeah.
and that's number one. What I call the brain dump.
Mhm.
Now, the brain dump is a process that I developed, a few years ago, I try to tell everybody that I come in contact with. So this is a fantastic way. When you're overwhelmed and you have so much going on, your mind is going to be holding all of these things. And I found, for me at least, that my greatest stress is and the things that wake me up.
Mhm.
When you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, I have to pay the bills. Oh, I have to. What I would focus on is taking a moment of my time
Mhm.
and say like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, get a pad of paper and take every thought that comes through your mind, everything, any thought, work, home, family, relationships, friendships, business, that you're starving,
Mhm.
whatever thoughts come into your head, you're like, oh man, I really could use some coffee right now.
Mhm.
I could use some coffee.
Yeah.
All the things that cross your mind, write them down and put them on the paper, and then when you're done with that, you'll start to slow down, right? And eventually, what will happen is you'll realize there's maybe one or two more,
Mhm.
but when you've got that on the list, you're going to immediately feel a sense of peace that you no longer have to carry it up here.
Yeah.
Now it's on your paper. The next step is take that paper that you've got and
Yeah.
organize it.
Yes.
Important, urgent, important, not urgent.
Yeah.
Not urgent, not important.
Yeah.
Guess what? Not important, not urgent. Just strike it
Yeah.
out. Don't worry about it.
I feel like, that's a great tip for, it'll help you with anxiety, right? Like, you've already put it down, taken everything out of your mind essentially and put it on paper.
Yeah, it's no longer your responsibility to
Yeah.
carry it around. You've got
Ye-
it.
Yes, definitely a great tip. And Paul, thank you for being here and taking us on your journey and for sharing with us.
Of course, thank you.
And I enjoyed talking with you and listening to your story. And thank you for overcoming, because we want those examples, right? We want to show examples of people that have overcome challenges and how do we overcome, right? How did you navigate this phase? So thank you for the great tips. Thank you for your time.
You're
We
welcome.
wish you the best of, in your 5-year mark
Thank you.
with the doctor and prayers that everything is good and
It
you're in
will be.
remission. Um, and we'll definitely put your music in the
Oh,
description.
okay.
And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
And,
much.
stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you.